perfect for us to introduce the Vaastu Shastra to the students because they are working on sustainable development, and this is something that is such a core part of Indian culture and how we perceive built spaces. And so that's one of the reasons why we reached out to you and asked you to talk to us today. And I just want to tell you also that the students come from a very diverse background. So they're students from all kinds of disciplines. So you have engineering students, you have social sciences students, management students, and they're all working on different aspects of sustainable development. Many of them are not from India. I think over half of them are not from India. So they don't have a great familiarity with Indian customs, Indian traditions, and even Indian vocabulary. So they may be not familiar with a lot of things that we would take for common, like even the word stapati or even the word Vaastu Shastra, to some extent is very new for them. And if I could take a moment to also introduce ma'am to the rest of the class. Dear class, just such a privilege for us to have Madam Srimati Sashikala Ananth. She's one of the foremost experts in the field of Vastu Shastra. I think in your syllabus you have an idea of what Vastu Shastra is. Her lifelong passion has been the study of Vastu Shastras and adapting the profound insights of the ancient texts to contemporary living. She has researched the classical Indian science of architecture, which is basically the Vastu Shastra, for over 3 decades. And she was a student of Sri Ganapati Stapati, who is a leading authority on Vastu Shastra. She is the recipient of the Ashoka Foundation Scholarship for Innovative Contribution to this field. And she is also a part of a team that made an award-winning film in 1991. It was called The Living Tradition, A Shilpi Speak. And Shilpi means, the word Shilpi means the sculptor. The book she's written on Vastu Shastra are considered definitive works in this field. She is able to conceive and to apply the design concepts as well as the philosophy effectively by consolidating all streams of learning, which includes yoga, behavioral sciences, fine arts, mythology, craft, Vastu Shastra, architectural training, and human psychology. Her work as a behavioral scientist has been largely focused on helping NGOs and educational institutions. She herself is a founder of Vadivam. It's a design and self-development center, and the Ritambhara Ashram, which is a yoga and a meditation center, offers alternative ways of engaging with life, which is rooted in Indian tradition and encompasses the contemporary practices to help you live a very full life full of flavor. So without more of an explanation, I'm sure you're all very impressed by the amount of knowledge, indigenous knowledge to our country that Srimati Sashikala Ananth Madam holds. Ma'am, we're very, very honored and grateful to have you speak to us. Thank you again for accepting our.
Thank you.
So happy to be hearing.
Namaskaram. It's a wonderful opportunity to see such a diverse group. I think that's the first thing that I'm finding fascinating, because I've talked to a lot of groups, but more or less they will be yoga based or all Indians or whatever. It's fairly, monochromatic. Suddenly it's a polychromatic scene that I'm seeing. Very interesting. Okay. Vastu Shastra, shall I start by giving you a short introduction for about 5 minutes on what is Vastu Shastra and why it is critical today. And then we'll go into the slides because it's easier to understand the subject through the visuals. It's a very visual subject. Okay. So unfortunately, in the last 100 years, a lot of our traditional systems have been sidelined because of the colonial educational pattern we have sort of internalized and looked at our own past as something that is backward. And very slowly, many of them are making a comeback. So you have Ayurveda having made a comeback, yoga having made a comeback, and Vastu Shastra is also making a comeback. But simultaneously, there's a lot of market forces that is making these subjects also extremely commercial and fear-based. And one of the things that I have been trying to do My husband has been working with yoga and I have been working with Vaastu Shastra. We have been trying to bring back the ability to heal, to build, to live in a way that would be graceful, dignified, and in relationship with nature, rather than as a reaction to fear and commercial interests. This is something that I would say is the underlying message to everything that we are attempting to do at Ritambhara. So having said that, I'll also speak about a little bit about Vastu as a journey for me, because then it will make sense to you. Because it's not something that is a theoretical thing that we are bringing from the past and putting on to a totally unconnected reality of the current times. It cannot be like that. Then it would be a very bad fit indeed. So for me as an architect, I walked back into the tradition. I went away from the mainstream for 10 years, completely went away from the mainstream. I stopped practicing as a modern architect, set it all aside, set my tools aside, and went into studying the texts and the methodology of construction by the traditional, what is known as the Vishwakarma. Vishwakarma were the traditional builders and artists, sculptors, jewelers, and various other professions, which is what is known as technical systems. So they have their texts and then they applied it in a technical manner in the field. So I studied with them for 10 years, worked with them for 10 years, and I was the first woman to do so because it's a very strongly male dominated system. But after me, many women have learned, which is a great thing. And afterwards, around 92 or so, I moved away and started my own work with this traditional wisdom. So technically, if you look at it, there are maybe 3, 4, maybe even 5,000 years of history of the Vastu Shastra. All the monuments, the temples, the towns, individual houses, the forts, the palaces, everything that you can see up till the last 150 or 200 years ago was made, was built, was designed using the Vastu Shastra. And this is the traditional mode. So you have mention of the Vastu Shastra in the text known as the Vastu Shilpa Shastra, as well as in the Buddhist texts, as well as in the Jain texts, and in all the philosophical treatises also. It's a system that goes back to probably the Mohenjo-daro traditions and the civilizations. So you have a methodology of looking at the environment, looking at materials, both for building and for creating artifacts and art and craft items, which is based on an understanding of ratios, proportions, and also the aesthetics, which will create a delight within the user, which means there's a spiritual dimension to it. So it's an amazing system. It has survived in spite of the colonial system and prior to that the Islamic system. It has managed to survive in a very pure form. So you still have the texts, you still have the practitioners, and you still have their wisdom. Okay. So what is it that is significant about the traditional system of Vastu Shastra, which was practiced by the Vishwakarma? There are two elements to it. One is, of course, like I told you, the capacity to bring in a spiritual dimension. The other is a very unique methodology of education, what is known as Parampara Siksha. Parampara means traditional, Siksha means education. So there's a traditional way of teaching, which is very different from the linear university education that most of us have undergone, where the various parts of the body are brought into the learning, which means the sensitivity of your the senses, the ability to smell and taste and touch and feel and see and all that, all your faculties are brought into the learning mode. So there is a method by which the knowledge is embodied. It is not just sitting here in the top of your head, like most of our university education, which is just data and information that we spout. Some people are smarter at it and some people are less smart at it. But by and large, it's a brain-based function. This education, the Parampara Siksha, is a very unique methodology, which we are trying to bring into most of our work at Ritambara, where we teach in what is known as an experiential mode, where your faculties are opened out. So you're actually learning with all your senses at their peak sensitivity. Okay, so this is another very important aspect of the Vastu Shilpa Shastra. Then the next one is that there is a capacity to create objects in space which are capable of healing the person, which is a very unique dimension. This is what is known as Chikitsa. Chikitsa is a word that means therapy or healing. So what I have attempted to do in the last 35, 40 years of my work in this field is to bring all these elements together, where you teach in a way that would embody the knowledge, you build in a way that it will impact not only the mind and the physical needs, but also the spiritual center. And finally, if you can do something about the energies of a space to heal the occupants of their various stresses, distresses, anxieties, and so on, we are talking about a totally different way of looking at the built environment. Okay, so is there anybody who wants to stop me here and ask me anything, or at least open your thing and tell me it's making sense? Thumbs up, something. Otherwise, I'm talking to a blank screen. It's a little hard.
I
Does
think I should not
anybody?
speak for myself. Any of the students? Oh yeah, there's a lot of thumbs up, ma'am.
Oh, very good, very good. Otherwise, it's very difficult, to speak to a blank screen.
Yes, ma'am. I can.
Okay, great. Okay, so if this is making sense to you, we'll move on from here. And whoever has my slides, maybe we can get onto the screen. I sent the slides to Sarala. Yeah, okay. Right. So we will start by paying homage to the great, let's have the first slide, please. Yeah, that one. Right. Right. So this is a beautiful verse from the Shilpi's diary. And it says, in sound through music, in the body through dance, in words through poetry, in space through architecture, in form through sculpture, in thought through mathematics, there is the divine experience, rasa, or the experience. So every one of these fields, which means 6 ways, have been set out through which a divine or a spiritual experience can be brought about in the occupant's mind, in their heart, in their senses. The next one, please. So let's pay homage to the greats of yesteryear. Not enough photographs of generation prior to this. This is my teacher's father, Vaidyanatha Stapati, who was a very great Sanskrit scholar. He was also a very good astrologer and one of the first people to receive the National Award as a craftsperson. So I offer my grateful thanks to this person through whom the knowledge has been preserved and brought forward. The next one. Those of you who have been to Chennai, earlier it was called Madras, there is this very unusual modern traditional structure. It's a combination of both, called the Gandhi Mandapam, where the traditional features were used to create an amphitheater. Behind this facade is actually an amphitheater, which is used for a lot of theater performances, and very beautiful proportions. And it was a modern structure completely built with stone. I think that was a great shift for Vaidyanatha Stapati, the architect who designed this, who was only used to creating temples. For him to use his knowledge for a contemporary structure was a huge shift. The next one. Yeah. He was also a great devotee of Ramana Maharishi, who is a very great spiritual powerhouse, I would say, who lived in the early part of the 20th century in a place called Tiruvannamalai, which is very well known for the Deepam. Deepam is the light that they light on top of the hill to spread goodness and wellness throughout the area. So this sculpture of Ramana Maharishi was made by Ganapati Stapati's father. And this was also a departure, because they did not actually make sculptures of living people. They only made sculptures of gods and deities. People they seldom did. So this was also a great departure. It's a very powerful sculpture, and very, very well recognized. The next one. Yeah. The second Stapati I would like to pay my respects to is Amritalinga Stapati. Again, a very famous person who was a scholar and an astrologer. In Kongunadu is the area around Coimbatore. Those of you who know India, it's the area around Coimbatore. Okay. Next one. So this is a very interesting piece. This again is a modern piece that he has made. It's made out of a single stone, just to show their great skill. The little ornamental hanging on the sides, it's what is known as a stone chain. And it's made out of the same stone. So which means a chain-like thing where the pieces will move is created out of a single stone. Remarkable level of skill. The next one. Okay, so having paid the respects to the greats of yesteryear, I want to talk about what is the basis of Indian traditional wisdom. Balance and harmony. This is the very basis of all the systems. And alignment, a way in which you can bring together diverse parts of yourself into an energetic center. That's what is meant by balance and harmony. So each of these systems speaks of this, an inner balance, and a process through which this balance can be achieved, which is known as a sadhana. So you have yoga, where the balance and harmony is created out of the body, the mind, and the breath. Sharira, manas, and prana. Then in Ayurveda, which is the medical system, the balance is created out of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, which are considered to be the three constituents. And this is done through diet and food and all that, medicine. Vastu is where you create an integration of the person, their inner space and their outer space, which means their built environment. How can you create a balance between these three? Okay, next one. Right. The Vastu Purusha Mandala, which is the basis of the Vastu, where you have the energy placed in a stable state. You also bring in astrology. Those of you who know a little bit of Hindu astrology, each of the parts of the Vastu Purusha or the energy space also has the location of the various planets. And in the Indian astrology system, it's not just the planets. We also bring in what are known as the Rahu and Ketu, which are the locations of the eclipse. So by locating the planets onto the space, you're creating what is known as a cosmology. And this is a very important aspect of Vastu, because from this, you're actually linking the birth time of the person who's going to occupy the space and the house that they're going to occupy. It's a very interesting aspect, which many of you would find unusual and new, because this is not there in any other tradition of architecture, where you're actually bringing in astrology into the built form. So I just thought this is something I can introduce you to. Maybe you can go into it later in greater depth. Okay, the next one. This is the Vastu Purusha Mandala. Okay, where I showed you earlier, the previous one where we said we are locating all the gods on this, all the planets on it. Vastu Purusha Mandala is considered to be the energetic.
I'm very wicked today.
Bernard, please mute your mic.
Sorry, ma, please.
There is an energetic aspect to space, both the two-dimensional space and the three-dimensional space. And this energy is potent and capable of transforming each of our lives if we know how to access it. So Vastu Shastra is a way in which this energy from the earth and the environment can actually be brought into the space in a subtle manner to influence our everyday life. Okay, and that requires, of course, enormous training. Each of us has to go through this training, and the grid that you create on the energetic space is through which the design is going to be manifested. Next one. Okay, now we are going to a very interesting aspect of the Vastu Shastra. Vastu says there are three critical aspects of creating a form. The first one is called Bhogadyam, which means function, the relationship between form and function. Then Sukha Darsham or Sukha Darshanam, which means aesthetics. And the third one, Ramya, which means inner wellness and delight. So the space and the form have to be in balance. So there is a possibility to deal with the practical functional needs of the home. There is an aesthetic sensibility you bring into it. And finally, through various philosophies and various techniques, you're able to create a space that would offer wellness and it will offer delight. So how is this possible? Because the people who used to do it in the early days, technically they were very good to bring about the space and form balance. They were also very creative. And finally, their team efficiency was very high. There is a lot of management to be learned from the working of the Vishwakarma community. And at Ratambara, we are trying to do that. We are trying to create a team that's capable of operating as a collective rather than where every other profession, if you look at it today, people are sort of like loose cannons. They just do their own thing. Nobody knows how to work together as an effective team. The next one. Okay. This is probably the masterpiece. We have several masterpieces. We will be running through them. This is a grand, great temple built in Tamil Nadu in the 11th century. It's called the Brihadishwara temple. It's a 800 feet by 400 feet is the size of the precinct. The height is 208 feet. The stone was actually brought in and placed in an area which was 2 kilometers area. And the amount of metal that is needed, a whole village was established just outside Tanjavur. It's called Karun Tattan Kudi. And it is still there. And the craftspeople worked as a team. They say it was done in 25 years. I don't know. There is no historical record of it, but that's what the community says. 25 years, an edifice of this size, with its complex carving, the fact that all the stones are stacked without any mortar is a remarkable achievement. And it's also a management breakthrough. The way in which it was built, I believe, was with what is known as a Sarakattu Suvar, which is a scaffolding wall that was created all around. Of course, there's a lot of extremely foolish theories running around in the internet, which says they created a 3-kilometer long ramp on which the stones were rolled, which is impractical when you know that the building was without mortar. It could never have taken the weight of a 3-kilometer ramp pushing against it. It would have been, it would have collapsed. What they used to do was to build a scaffolding wall made of mud all around, on which the stones were carried up. It's a very simple technique. I saw them doing a similar kind of thing in a small stone temple in the 90s. Unfortunately, I don't have the pictures, but it was a remarkable procedure. Okay, next one. Then, of course, the other great achievement, Ellora. This is in Maharashtra. It's a totally different genius. This is not where you stacked the stone. You actually hollowed the stone. It was supposed to have been a 100-foot high rock face. And from the top to the bottom, they hollowed it into this remarkable sculptural sort of, I would say, tapestry. I don't even think it's possible to make a model like this. Once again, they say it took about 30, 40 years, but I don't know. It seems like too short a time, because the amount of stone that would have had to be removed and taken away is like huge amounts, tons of it. And without the machinery that we have today, that it was carried out in the 8th century is something else. Next one. Then this is much later. If I remember right, it's the 12th or the 13th century. This is in Mount Abu. This is in Gujarat, completely made out of marble. It's almost like the carving is like if you try to do it in soap or something like that. You can't believe the exquisite detailing that human beings could have actually achieved something like this. Such delicate pillars, still taking the weight, still standing there. And I think talking about, and again, individual excellence and team efficiency. Next one. Yeah. We move into sculpture. This is a very, very beautiful Nataraja in a place called Poneri Rajapuram in Tamil Nadu. I have been there. It's the central part of the film that we made. It's about, with the pedestal, the height is 6.5 feet. And it's what is known as a lost wax process. We are talking about an amazing level of craftsmanship, which is in the 9th century. We are talking about an understanding of metallurgy of an unbelievably advanced level, and all made in an extremely simple, rudimentary sort of a furnace. We have used that in our film also. Just in a small space in their own yard. The mud is taken from the river close by. The wax is molded. Everything is done as a almost like a cottage industry. But the level of the expertise and the level of technology is remarkable, because the melting of each of the metals, because this is what is known as Panchaloha, which means it has 5 metals in it. It has copper, it has brass, it has lead, it has gold, it has silver. Brass usually has a little tin. So which means there are 5 metals, and they have totally different melting points. And they have very simple crucibles in which the metal is melted, and hardly any flaws. It's an amazingly perfect piece. They add quite a bit of gold, which is why it has a golden hue, quite a bit of copper. So the amount of material that was required, amount of coal, amount of firewood, amount of clay, it's just amazing that they could achieve something like this in the 9th century. Yeah, next one. This is in a place called Shravanabelagula, which is in Karnataka. It's a standing Jain sculpture of one of their Tirthankara, one of their great saints known as Gomateshwara. It's a colossal statue made out of one piece of stone, and you can see it for about 3-4 kilometers as you're approaching, standing on top of a hill. And even today, they have to build a scaffolding to climb up to clean it and repair it and so on. This again is another remarkable achievement. They must have spent many years doing it, probably horizontally, and then lifted it and placed it erect, because they couldn't have carved it standing. It would have always been kept on the ground and carved, so that there is no vibration to the stone. Another unbelievable achievement. The next one. Yeah. So how do you achieve these perfect proportioned images? What is the meaning that is brought into each aspect of the image? All these have to be studied. They have to be expressed. So the seated Buddha, the standing Buddha, the kind of garment, like the third one that you can see, transparent garment is shown so beautifully. This kind of perfection in the proportion has a completely, I would say, intact theory that is still being practiced today. And that theory is known as Talamanam. Talamanam means the measurement based on rhythm and proportion. So the rhythm and proportion in this is the face length. Every sculptural form is a multiple of the face length. And the standing Buddha is 1:10. The face is 1, 10 times that is the height of the body. It is known as Dasha Tala, the 10 rhythm. Okay, the next one. So behind the quality of the sculpture, why do you make these elaborate sculptures? So that human beings can bring about that energy into themselves and get into a meditative state, for which puja was a very important aspect. Puja means prayer or ritual. Through creating a space, a context where you are adoring and celebrating the energies that are beyond your consciousness, you are bringing them into your living space, which is why there is a temple where the puja is done and there is a puja that is done in the home. Both are equally important. And then there is also an inner puja where you don't have the symbols and you work with only the energy and the space. But that's a very highly advanced state. Only people who are in a higher state of consciousness can do that. Puja and ritual is meant for the everyday people, people like you and I, for whom this symbolic, beautiful context is created, and that vibration is internalized so that there is a quietening of the sorrow, the pain, and the stress within ourselves. Okay. Next one. In the home, traditionally, this is an old village home. The central courtyard, which was part of the passive solar device to keep the space cool during summers, there was a central space in which the tulasi or the basil, the holy basil, was planted in that, and it was taken care of. It was fostered, nurtured by the family, invariably the woman of the family. The holy basil is at one level seen as a symbol of the divine. At another level, it is also seen as a healing plant. So it was watered in the morning, a few leaves were plucked, and that was used in the food in various ways. When the basil was absolutely healthy, it was considered that the family was also in good health. It was a symbol of the wellness and the health of the family. Next one.
Okay, yeah.
That's it. That was the last one. Okay.
That is the last one.
There were some questions here.
Yes, there's a few questions here. We'll just have a look. Oh, Mukhil, do you want to discuss this about that you read something about the environmental psychology attention restoration that's related to the concept of the Chikitsa and healing?
Maybe you can take out this. We don't need it anymore. We can look at the gallery. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe people can open out so we can see each other.
Yes, let's nice. Put our, yes,
Yeah?
Good. Very good. Nice. Mukhil?
I have read something on attention restoration, where which the external environment or the architecture or bringing plants inside the home, etc. can bringing plants or growing plants inside the home, etc. can reduce the cognitive or emotional loop that the people already have.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Mukul.
Share?
Can you
I
hear?
think my connection is unstable or yours, I don't know. Can you repeat?
I can hear him.
Yeah, can you repeat it,
Yeah.
Mukul? I think my connection is not good. Let me take out my video. Yeah. Can you repeat it, Mukul?
You were saying about the Chikitsa associated with the architecture.
Chikitsa, yeah.
Chikitsa, yeah. So
Okay.
recently, when I was reading, I got something called attention restoration, where which a person can come out of the cognitive or emotional loop by being in a settlement, different settlement, or while going through a walk through a like forest or environment space to reduce pain. So I just commended it. That's it. I read something.
Yes, definitely. See, nature and being in tune with nature or in rhythmic relationship with nature is the best healer. So in what way can you bring back that energy or that relationship? But if you don't have access to it, like in a city, in an urban environment, when you have no access to nature, then is there a way in which it can be done? That's what we try to do.
In temples, we used to see elephants and the other sculptures like Mrigamala, they used to call Mrigamala. So is that have any impact on people's behavior or any such kind of things?
Of
Were
course.
you able to hear that?
Of course. The whole idea, it's not, behavior is a very superficial thing, no? You're really talking about it, assisting them in their inner balance. Then behavior automatically will change. Behavior is only a product.
They wanted to clarify, somebody wanted to clarify if the ratio is 1 to 10 for the size of the shilpa. So 1 part is the head and then 9 parts the body.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Someone has a question?
May I just
Akshay?
request everyone to please turn on their cameras so that ma'am can see you. Guys, quickly, you can all turn on your cameras.
Debashish, you have a question?
No, not yet. I'm still digesting.
Okay.
I have a comment, ma'am. I remember seeing in Bhadrachalam the kind of chains. Actually, that's the first time I noticed stone chains. Either it's the Ratha Mandapam or one of the Kalyana Mandapam, but the amount of intricacies that was there on that stone chariot was just mind blowing. The other temple that of course, the Meenakshi temple is super amazing with the sculptures. But the other one was in Warangal, you have this Ramaka Temple, and there's a bunch of temples that were constructed, I think, in similar styles. Again, they're not very similar to the typical South Indian temples, but again, the sculpting is like amazing, including some stone. I remember there's this little tree. It's a small tree, but you could just tap on that little tree on different parts of the trunk, and it produced all the 7 notes in the music.
Absolutely.
Just depending on where you tap the trunk.
But that is based on what is known as a resonant stone. See, there is a lot of technology involved here. The sourcing of the material You had what is known as a male stone, female stone, and a neutral stone.
Wow.
Pullinga Shila, Strilinga Shila, and Napumsakalinga Shila. So
What would be a reason
they were
stone to be
classified
male
like
or
that.
female?
Yeah, they were classified as three linga because the male stone was the one which had the most resonance. Female was less. The neutral stone did not have resonance. So non-resonant stone was used only in architecture. And the resonant stone was used in sculpture as well as in the pillars, the musical pillars. So the stone itself has a certain resonance.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I have a kind of a question. I've heard that there's like many.
See, the question that people will ask is, why did people do so much elaborate work on the temples, on the sculptures? And the reason is because they were actually celebrating the divinity. And to celebrate divinity, you use beauty, aesthetics, Sringara, beauty and love. So with great love, you created something that was beautiful. Yeah, somebody else asked a question?
Well, I was just curious. Is somebody asking a question besides me?
I think Krishni has just typed a question in the chat.
I've heard there's many Vaastu Shastras from all over the country, and that they are in, many are very well preserved. And I was just wanted to see if you could speak a little bit about that and the different kinds, or where they come from, or how the division of understanding them is. Did you hear me?
Sorry about that. I got disconnected for a moment. Yeah, tell me.
Oh,
Somebody
no,
asked
okay.
a question.
I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the different Vaastu Shastras that exist from all over the country.
Can you repeat it, please?
The different Vaastu Shastras from all over the country.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit about it. Were they for different things, or they were just all from different regions that were doing the same kind of thing?
Are you talking about the text?
Yes. Yes.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, okay. There were different texts from various parts of the country. And that's because the practitioners from various parts of the country, they were not centralized. So you had Vishwakarma in Gujarat and South India and Madhya Pradesh and so on. So most of the texts were written in Sanskrit. Okay. But
Sure.
there are also regional texts. There were originally 64 Samskrita texts known as the Vaastu Shastra. And amongst these, there are the popular ones, Manasaram, Mayamata, then Samarangana Sutradhar, Manushyalaya Chandrika, Vishwakarmiyam. There is a whole set of texts which are popular with the Vishwakarma practitioners from various parts of the country. And there are certain proportions that have been set out in them, certain methodologies which are followed by the local people. But they also talk about local conditions. the geography, the slopes, the materials, and so on.
Interesting.
Mm.
Interesting. Anyone else with a question?
I think both Krishna and there's one more question from Eston GG. So Krishna can ask
Okay.
this question, I guess. Krishna, do you want to go ahead? Eston GG, do you want to ask your question?
Okay, yes, I can ask on that. My network is a bit low. I might be cutting on the way. I'm looking at the, maybe if possible, the builders themselves, could they be related to the Babylonian builders during the time of Nebuchadnezzar, like in the biblical point of view? And maybe, okay, as historians, maybe people might have read about the Tower of Babel. Those people were trying to build that structure which was going towards the heavens or the outer space. So I'm looking at the artifacts and the way the architecture which is being portrayed and the mixture of the stones which they have used. So that's my point of reference in this question. Thank you.
Are you saying, is there a connection between the architecture of India and Middle East? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, in those lines, looking at the arrangement of the
Ziggurat,
the
ziggurat.
the skew. Yes, yes.
Yeah. See, there has been a very similar growth in the evolution in architecture all over the world. There is no denying that. But whether the people were actually communicating, whether skilled craftspeople were moving across from one country to the other, I don't have enough historic knowledge. Whether there was actually a movement. But there is a strong sort of a guess in many people who have done work in archaeology that there was a lot of movement of craftspeople across from Africa to India. So there would have been a cross-pollination of skills and craftsmanship, which would have taken place. But I don't have any evidence about this. It's not my area of work.
Okay, thank you so much. But at least I've gotten something. They said that due to the movements from one point to the...
There is a lot of data that there was movement, but that is true from the earliest nomadic tribes, which is 15, 20,000 years ago, and maybe much more than that. There is a lot of data about movement of people from Asia to Africa.
Okay. Otherwise, it's a really amazing skills which has been portrayed. And maybe the other question: could we say the technology or the people who were the architects those days were more skillful than us these days, or I don't know what could be your comment on those lines?
It's possible because there is a mention in some of our texts that they were actually bigger people.
Okay.
There is a mention that the earlier people were actually bigger, not smaller like we think. They were stronger, definitely stronger, because they lived through personal effort. They didn't have machines to do anything for them. So they were physically probably stronger than we are. But that's what I was trying to explain. The team efficiency is something remarkable. their ability to work together. Otherwise, they couldn't have done what they did. It
Yes.
cannot be done by one person.
Yeah.
And today we are not able to work together at all. All of us are pulling, our separate ways, wanting
Yeah.
to show up our own individual greatness.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Arun, you want to speak?
Yes. So thank you, ma'am, for sharing your experience with Vastu Shastra, your life experience. That's really interesting to me. You touched upon the link between some nakshatras, also some kind of energies and direction in architecture, if I understood correctly. And I've also read at some point that in Vastu Shastra they recommend that, for example, sleeping should be with the head towards the east and avoid the north. And somehow it stuck to my mind for some
That's
reason.
right.
And could you expand on this?
There are many theoretical concepts. I didn't want to talk about it unless people were interested. There is a lot of theoretical concepts about directions and energies. And yes, the head, the body is actually, the human body is seen as very close to the magnetic directions. So when you take a magnet, the head is supposed to be very close to the north pole of the magnet. So if you put your head on the north side, I believe it starts getting activated like the North Pole and leads to a lot of dreams. So normally placing your head in the north is not recommended because it can lead to disturbed sleep. It can be in the south, east or west. West is not recommended by a lot of people, but I find west very comfortable because when you get up, you see the rising sun. And so these three directions are considered to be more effective. Then regarding the astrology, astrology is actually a very critical aspect, but it doesn't mean that everything can be defined astrologically. After having worked with Bogadyam Sukha Darshana Mandramya, which means you have taken care of the utilitarian needs, you have created a home which is useful and capable of looking after your needs. And then you have also put in some aesthetic sensibility. You have looked after certain proportions. Then there is a calculation called Ayadi Shadvarga, which is to come up with a perfect measurement for the perimeter of the building after having done everything else. So you're checking the size of the building against the horoscope of the owners. Usually it's the man and the woman. It's meant for a family where there is the feminine and the masculine energies. So if there's no the person is not married or doesn't have a partner, then it can be his parents or her parents. So there's a man and a woman to take their horoscope, and using those certain numericals from there is a calculation of 6 steps that you take through, after which you come up with a perimeter that is appropriate for that family. And this is known as Ayadi. And this is something that's a very specialized thing. It's only recently that I have started teaching this to people. It takes time to understand this. And it's very difficult for people who are non-designers to be able to use this. So there is a geometric way in which certain things are taken forward, and there is an arithmetical calculation to come up with a certain vibration in a space, which is very close to astrology. It's a subject on its own. It's not something that I can quickly tell you, but this is the basis of it.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Anushree, you have a question?
Yes, maybe just as a follow-up to that, what happens when you're not really fully able to follow these Vastu recommendations? Is it very detrimental, or can you sort of go around it?
This is a very critical question. Let me address it in a slightly different manner, not directly. I will give you some data on this. Those of you who know a little bit about Hindu astrology, you are probably reading and downloading stuff from the internet, which tells you all sorts of scary stuff that are going to happen because Venus and Jupiter have a conjunction coming up in a month's time. And if you're in your horoscope, it's in Virgo, this will happen to you. This is a new thing. This is happening today. In the current scenario, this is not very different from you going into a hospital and the doctor says to you, if you don't come in for your operation tomorrow morning, I can't promise you you'll be alive tomorrow evening. This is not different from that. Today, the context is that everybody is using fear to manipulate you, including what's happening with the COVID now. Yes, it is a grim situation, but half the problem is going to be if you're so scared that your resistance becomes zero. So it is actually counterproductive to make you so scared that you're going to fall ill, right? So the attitude of creating fear is something that I would question. So it is not that if you don't do something, something terrible will happen to you. The reality is if you do something in a particular way, it will enhance your life. It's not going to create a detrimental effect by not doing. So don't worry about that. If you want to add to something, go ahead and add to it, right? If you don't feel convinced, don't do it. It's like, I mean, having a good diet. I know people who live till they're 90 and they're eating fried food 3 times a day. They're perfectly at liberty to live like that. There's nothing wrong with it. I know. I had an uncle who used to drink 3 times coffee in a day, and at odd times he'll be popping fried food into his mouth. He lived till he was 90. So that's not the point. The point is that by doing something, which is like a good diet or a well-crafted home or a natural fiber clothes and organic food stuff and so on, you're enhancing your life. Not doing is not going to kill you. Don't worry about that.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That's great. That's reassuring.
Let's see. Bhavani, did you want to talk, or shall I go on to Salcha? You want to ask your question?
I'm getting unstable again. I'm going to stop my video.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, no. So my question was just about when you were talking about calculating the perimeters based on the horoscopes of the people who live in the building. And I just wondered, is that using the sort of principles of numerology and the relationships of numbers to one another? Or is it based on another system?
No, this is totally different. Ayadi Shadvarga is a totally different system. It's coming from the Vaastu Shastra. Numerology might have taken it from here because this is ancient. What I'm talking about is 4,000-5,000 years old. Numerology is a very new subject. No, it's not an ancient subject.
Thank you.
Amabile, You have your hand up?
Yes, I have a question. Hello, can you hear
Yes.
me?
Yes.
Okay, and there's a beautiful statue that was displayed in one of the slides, though I can't remember the name of that statue. It had different kinds of minerals on it, like gold. There was also copper and the others. So I was wondering.
I'm losing you. My connection again has become very unstable.
Okay. So I was wondering.
You'll have to restate, Amabel. I didn't get you.
Okay. I was saying that there's a beautiful statue which was displayed in one of the slides. It had different kinds of minerals like copper. There was also gold, and other minerals. Now I was wondering if the different minerals used on that statue, if they have some meaning in line with the spiritual or cultural aspect, or was it just for decorative purpose?
Did you get that, Sashikala?
Hello?
I think we lost.
Sorry, I got cut off again. I think you'll have to go over it again, Amabel.
Okay.
I completely missed you.
Yes.
Somebody can paraphrase it? Yeah.
Yes. I meant the minerals on one of the statues that was displayed on one of the slides.
The pancha metal one.
Yeah, the pancha loha, yeah. It is copper. Copper is the main.
Yes.
And then there's a little bit of tin from brass. Brass also has copper.
Yes.
And then you're bringing in a little bit of gold and silver.
Yes. So my question is, do those minerals have meaning in line with the spiritual or cultural aspect, or are they just for decorative purpose?
Each of them does have. Copper is used very often in many of the traditional systems, including what is known as a mandala, is made out of copper. Copper, I believe, has a vibration which is very healing. In fact, copper vessels is what we store our water in. So it has a highly powerful healing capability.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay. How much more time do you have, Sashikala, for this meeting?
Today, now?
Yes.
I thought it was still 8:30. We still have about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then we take a question or two. Debashish, you want to ask your question?
Yes. Shashikala ji, I want, when you told me about people's horoscopes and perimeter marking, I was trying to extrapolate it to the political boundaries that we have in the country today. And I was trying to think, is there any evidence of history or your own studies where such demarcations of boundaries could lead to social harmony? Because we have seen that even our country after independence, there are some sensitive states which have been conflict prone. Is Vastu Shastra saying something about these things? I'm sure there must be something. Please do share if your findings on this. Thank you.
This is a difficult question because I don't know whether you're aware of it. The states in India was not natural. It was done by the British. Did you know that?
Yes,
they just exactly like what they did in Africa. It was like taking a graph sheet and then drawing boundaries. So you had people who were in the Gujarat border going away into Maharashtra, and people who were in Marathi border moving into Gujarat and so on. So it was an artificial kind of boundary that was drawn by a people who had absolutely no respect for either the dialect or the culture or the civilization of that space, which is bound to have created conflicts to start with. So I don't know whether we can go about doing anything about it right now, but it's a good idea. Maybe something can be tested out, whether maybe in a small scale, create small communities or collectives where boundaries can be demarcated, and with a particular commitment to a particular kind of peaceful solution, and we can watch. I think it can only be done as an experiment. I don't think there is a way in which this can be reworked into the borders that we are sitting with today, because those borders are historical. They're about 150 years old, no, 200 years old.
Ma'am, under such circumstances, whose horoscope should be taken?
There is something called Nama Nakshatram. Nama Nakshatram, have you ever seen a almanac? This is, I'll show it to you. I just got the latest one. This is known as the Panchangam. Have you seen the Panchangam? Which is the Indian horoscope? I mean, Indian almanac. Okay. So in this, there is a page which says Nama Nakshatra. Nama Nakshatra means the first letter of your name, or the first letter of a town's name, or the god's name, will give a certain nakshatra. Nakshatra means the moon sign. Okay, and that you can use for the calculation. It's an acceptable method.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so then one more thing is that we would be interested in learning more about how the team structures in ancient times worked. Is there a Shastra on that?
I was asking if there are any research papers.
There is the teams. I think the only way is to learn from them. I have written some things on this.
Would you
how the team operates? They have 4 particular functions, and they actually create a team around that. That can be put together. I have a lot of data on that. If you're interested, I can offer that data to people.
Ma'am, if you have anything that you have written up on how those team structures work, like an article or a research paper, we'd love to read. Ma'am, could you hear me?
Yeah.
Ma'am, I said if you have anything written up about the team structures, either an article or a paper on how the ancient team structures worked, I think we would be very interested in learning from that.
Sure, I can send you some papers.
Wonderful.
Just send me the link who wants to get that. I will photocopy. They are actually in the books itself. Some work has been done on that. I can put it together for you. Remind me, send me a note, and I will send it to you. Not a problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But what I would suggest to you people is something slightly different. If enough number of people in your group are interested in learning about this, we can do a one-day workshop.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
One day or 2 days.
Let me explain. Ma'am, let me explain the reason why I asked you this question. So part of the work that we do here is I head this group called Amachi Labs, and we focus on skill development. So we focus on teaching both vocational and life skills using technology. So while looking at vocational education, I've oftentimes looked at past skills and also really appreciated the amount of aesthetic knowledge that was there, and also just the scientific perfection in a lot of the skills that are traditional. And I really appreciated that part of your lecture. But I was also interested in this fact that that you talked about the teamwork. And so in now building courses, like you said, nowadays the education system doesn't have this really the experiential part of it. And even if you're doing vocational education, it's devoid of the aesthetics. It's also devoid of this whole sense of team. And so I wanted to know a little bit more about it so that when we are working on the vocational skills with people in rural India, we can bring back these elements. And the idea of a one-day workshop on that is exciting for me. And I think I'll be very, very interested in organizing something like that with you. I'm not sure if ma'am is still on. She may have.
Yeah, I keep going on in and out. Sorry about this. So it's a very, very bad connection today. See, I live in the hills, so it's it's not always reliable. Yeah, you were saying that you would like to
understand a little bit more on this teamwork part of it, and a one-day workshop actually sounds really exciting.
1 day or even 2 days. See, normally what I prefer is not a whole day, but 3 or 4 hours only, because I think people need time to reflect.
Right, right.
So we can have two days of 3 or 4 hours a day.
That sounds exciting, because I think that would be very valuable for us when we're designing courses on the vocational training side of things.
You can do that.
Because it's purely skill development, and this would be very useful for us.
Let me know.
Yes, ma'am.
Let
so
me
I'll
know,
reach
and I
out
will
to you.
send you.
Yes.
I will send you a sort of a brief framework of how we can go about it. So there is a lot more interactive work and so on.
Sure.
Certainly.
Oh, that sounds exciting, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
That would be nice.
Okay.
Devashish is asking,
whether everybody can come to the hills. Yes, yes, we have an ashram here in the Nilgiris, and it's a beautiful place. Unfortunately, for 1.5 years, nobody has been able to come.
I know. Yeah.
Where in Nilgiris, ma'am? Are you close to
Nilgiris is in Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you've heard of Ooty.
Yeah. So it's on the way to.
We are about 25 kilometers from Ooty. Yeah, in a place called Kothagiri.
Wonderful. That must be such a wonderful place to have.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I sit in the garden and work all day, listening to the birds.
Jealous now, ma'am.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, did you see this note here from Arun that he's been doing some work there?
Yeah, I have been doing some in the Nilgiris for an orphanage. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Nice. Next time you come here, let me know, nice. Arun. It's a beautiful place. So we can definitely have something happening here.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you so much for your generosity and time. And yeah, we'll have to set up a workshop.
Definitely. I'd love to teach. No problem. I enjoy teaching.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Okay. Devashish wants to ask one last quick question.
Ma'am, you can skip this question if you feel it's out of context, but I thought might be good counsel from you. I'm doing my PhD currently here, and many of us are scholars also. And we kind of face these normal problems related to analytical, logical reasoning and structuring and things like that, all the academic problems, and we are struggling. And is there any solution in all the subjects that you covered probably that we should consider upholding. I thought I'm just getting a little curious, but I just thought there's something interesting that can come out of it. That's why I'm asking you. Thank you.
You're asking whether there is any theory which will help in this, is it?
No, like you said, constructing a temple in a certain way enhances certain qualities. So to enhance these qualities of analytical reasoning or structuring, processing a lot of information, things that are required for our PhD. Are there certain things that we can take care of? Are there certain methods, recommendations that way?
From Vaastu Shilpa Shastra, I don't know immediately, but certainly in Sanskrita chanting there is.
Okay.
There is a methodology by which your arithmetical, mathematical, analytical
capabilities
can be enhanced through certain types of chanting.
Okay.
That you can definitely check out, because there is a certain way in which chanting can be done that will shift the memory patterns.
Okay.
Your mental patterns. That can definitely be worked with. I don't know whether you've heard of something called Ghanam. Ghanam is a particular way of chanting, which is where you shift first you have to learn the chanting the normal way, and then you chant by using different word patterns, and through that you actually activate certain cells in your brain. It has been worked with quite effectively.
Oh, great. Do they also enhance skills?
I think so. I think it does, because I always say the more I learn and the more I create an internal alignment within myself, my intelligence definitely increases. Automatically your skills will increase also. Like I keep saying, like I said in the beginning, it's an embodying process. You don't operate on many fragments. You operate as a whole.
Okay.
And that holism is very important.
May I request Bhavani Chechi, when she plans the workshop, maybe this component can also be integrated in that?
Sure.
You cannot take shortcuts, Deba. There's no shortcut to hard work, okay? I'm sorry. But you're going to have to do anyway. You can do all the chanting you want.
Sashikala ji, Dr. Bhavani also happens to be my guide. That's why she is being strict.
No, but chanting has been recommended, particularly Gayatri Mantra. Yeah.
Yeah, somebody said it.
Yeah, Cell mentioned, what about the
Gayatri Mantra?
Gayatri Mantra said in a particular way. Of course, you have to say it in the correct manner. It has its own chandas. So you have to say it in that rhythmic manner. And if it's repeated 108 times every day, does actually shift some things. So this can also be, learned.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Can everybody just put your screens on for a second and say thank you and goodbye? And it's been very nice. This is one of my favorite talks.
Thank you.
I learned a lot.
Much.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
It's
wonderful hearing from you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
We'll be in touch with you
so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.